Hi, I'm Kevin Judah, and welcome to this week's edition of the Nation's Capital Sports Show, where it's most definitely on. We also have Chris Jerry and Vincent Charles. Afsheen, of course, is stuck on 95 due to the traffic. Sorry he couldn't make it, but the show must go on. So, gentlemen, he's going to be here with us in spirit. So let's talk about what we're going to talk about and what we normally talk about, the best and the most, and that is sports. Let's start talking about the NFL. And for those of you who are watching the show, we're going to talk about the Redskins. They're 0-3 now, but we're going to save not necessarily the worst for last, but we're going to dull that pain just a little bit. And so we're going to talk a little bit about the NFL, your observations for the first week of play. I'm going to throw something out there to you guys. The NFL has amassed close to $1 million in penalties for allegedly illicit hits. And that keeps on ticking, especially with the Redskins' Brandon Merriweather, who was charged $42,000 for an illicit hit in the Green Bay game against Lacey. Vincent.
Well, that's a result of the NFL trying to look out for the players and this concussion issue. The NFL trying to cover themselves and making it safer for the players. They needed to institute some ways to try to alleviate the head injury situation.
Well, here's the kicker about it, Chris, because a lot of the NFL players, including Brandon Merriweather, says, hey, I'm going to have to change the way I hit. No more helmet-to-helmet hits. Obviously, that's a big deal for some of the players. They say old habits are hard to break.
Right. Well, I think in the case of Merriweather, he will have to change the way he hits because he deserved that penalty. That was clearly a launch. But there's been some other penalties or other fines have been levied, and I don't think they've been too fair because, just because you hit a guy in the head, if the other player who has the ball moves, I don't know why you should get blamed for hitting him in the head. But as you said, a lot of money has been raised from that. But, hey, it is about safety. That's what the league says anyway. That's what they're trying to do. All
right, let's talk in terms of the way in which the play has been throughout the NFL. Take a look at the NFC. NFC East, not looking good. I mean, not a winning team in the bunch. The Redskins, of course, are 0-3. The Giants are 0-3. Dallas, of course, is losing. And the Philadelphia Eagles are kind of like on a losing skid as well.
Well, actually, the Eagles are 1-2. Dallas is 2-1 now.
But nonetheless, they haven't. What is it? Their winning record is more than their loss record is more than their win, except Dallas. Correct?
Yeah, right. Yeah, of the 4 teams in the division. I think we talked earlier, before the season started, we thought the NFC East would be one of the best in the NFL, and it's turned out to be the stinko of the 8 divisions in the NFL so far.
Vincent.
They certainly aren't or haven't started as the beasts of the East.
I like that.
0-3, the Redskins and the Giants, that's a surprise. The Giants are somewhat of a slow start of these past few years. But for the Redskins, this isn't too good of a start so far.
No, it's not. And when you say 0-3, if you just even take that to extrapolate that a little bit further, the Redskins lost to Green Bay. Well, that's been Green Bay's only win. Today, we have a situation where the Giants got killed by Carolina. That's Carolina's only win. So it's a rough start, but hey, that's the NFL. Things are surprising every year, the way it works out.
All right.
2 teams that I do think are living up to expectations. Number 1 is Denver, and number 2, Seattle. Both living up to expectations and having a good start so far.
That's right. Denver is having a good start. What about other observations that you see that teams that are doing pretty good?
Well, I have to say Seattle looks like they may be the beast of the NFC at least. They've gotten off to a really good start, especially beating San Francisco in the last game that they played. So I think Seattle looks like they've been the class in the NFC so far, but we've only gone through 3 games.
Yeah, kind of a rocky start overall in the NFL, no matter how you slice it. And it'll be interesting to see, as Chris alluded to, how things are going to finish up. Kind of like a slow start for most of the teams in the NFC East. I know that the Redskins, what can we say about that? We're going to talk about them one more segment down, but the bottom line is that the Redskins need to start winning. Let's talk a little bit now about what is becoming a NFL pastime, and that is fantasy sports. More than 22.5 million folks in the United States play fantasy sports. Now, I'm going to do a studio survey. How many folks play fantasy sports, NFL? Show of hands.
Do we raise our hand? No.
Well, we don't play it. Afsheen does. He's out. But no one else is participating in this, so I would say that no one in the studio, but trust me when I say this, even you folks at home, I'm quite sure those of you that are playing, because it is a very marketable equation for the NFL. It brings in millions and millions of dollars. Chris?
Yeah, a lot of fans do play fantasy, and it helps keep interest in the league, and it's led to the league to really try to do some things with in-stadium issues so that folks playing fantasy can keep up with what's going on statistically through the rest of the league.
Yeah, it's funny that you should mention about the in-stadium. There are 3 stadiums that are trying this on an experimental basis, and that they're having free wireless inside the stadium, and 1 hour before the game and 1 hour after the game, you can check on your fantasy football team. And the way in which they're doing this, or why they're doing this, is because some of these teams have conducted studies, such as the Detroit Lions, and they figured out, well, we have to keep our home visitors or home attendance up. And so some people would rather stay home as opposed to coming into the game. And so they say, well, we want to get these fantasy folks in, and we want to make it to sure that they come back to the game to eliminate these blackouts that a lot of the lower market teams are having in the NFL, Vincent.
This fantasy football movement, or what you want to call it, has certainly affected the attendance in some of these NFL stadiums. So, like these examples that Kevin just mentioned, that is a way for the NFL to try to get these fans coming back. I think a big attraction for the people involved in the fantasy football movement is a person becomes a general manager. They sort of want to prove how smart they can be choosing players and their teams and things like that.
Yeah,
and,
so I'm going to explain a little bit how this works. As you know, Vincent gave a little bit of it, but basically you are a commissioner of your own league. You have other players that have their teams, and then instead of you having your one set team, you get to draw and draft from players from all the other NFL teams. And so what happens is that creates a fan base. For example, if you're a 49er fan, and which I know that you are, then you're playing fantasy sports. You're going to get to know the other players in the NFL and so forth, and that may bring up the allegiance to other teams. And so what the NFL is banking on, because this is bringing in a lot of non-NFL football fans, and they're in it for the camaraderie, they're in it for not necessarily the monies, but the bragging rights of talking mess.
Yeah, from the business standpoint, you definitely see why the NFL would like it, to bring people in who are not traditional fans and folks that follow statistics. For me, one of the reasons I don't particularly like fantasy is because I want to root for my team. I'm not interested in necessarily rooting for somebody else just so my fantasy team can play. But clearly, there's lots of people around the country and around the world that like to play that fantasy sports.
And funny you should mention that. The reason why I don't participate in fantasy league football is because I like to sit in front of the television set and just enjoy the game. Whatever team I'm rooting for, I don't need to go and say, hey, X amount player that went for 8-9 yards, let me change that now. I mean, it's no disrespect, but I realize that fantasy sports, it is what it is, and it's bringing in a marketable business for a lot of the non-fans. And what happens is, basically, for the non-fans, they're coming into whatever NFL team that they like, and they're purchasing the jerseys. And that's what the NFL wants to hear and likes to see.
Yeah, the NFL is about money. That's what they're about all the way, and whatever works for them. But they need to do something to shore up their business plan a little bit, because as you alluded to earlier, they're starting to lose fans coming to the stadium, and that's the big thing that they want to stop, that erosion.
A couple other points that I wanted to mention is the people that were non-fans and now are interested in the NFL, they are finding out that things like injuries affect your team's performance, or one of their players having a couple of bad games. Also, another point is this is bringing women into the NFL a lot more so.
That's a good point. As a matter of fact, it's bringing probably about 4.7% of women that participate in fantasy sports. And I know several of them, they don't particularly like sports, but they love themselves some NFL fantasy sports. They get to root for their particular player or their favorite player, and they also get to buy a lot of jerseys as well. Because one thing about fantasy sports in the NFL is that if you're a fan of, say for instance, I'm a fan of the Washington Redskins. If I'm playing fantasy sports, well, I'm going to buy my Redskin jersey, and then I'm going to have a jersey of another team. And so what that means is that one particular user, one of our viewers, such as Jocelyn and Edwards of Fairfax in Fairfax, Virginia, she's a Redskins fan, and so she wears a Redskin jersey for one half, and then she resorts to her other jersey of the 49ers, by the way, in the second half, which, you know, she has a couple 49ers on her fantasy team. So it's nice to see that fantasy football is alive in the United States and in this area, although no one in the studio plays fantasy sports. I can't say that I do either. So let's move on to the Washington Redskins. Where do we begin? What is happening? What's going on? 0-3. They started in Philadelphia at home, a beatdown of epic proportions, and then Green Bay, another beatdown. And just recently, another loss. Although they lost this one kind of close, 27-20, the bottom just dropped out.
Well, you know, they scored 13 points on offense against Detroit. Don't know really what to make of it. You know, some thought is that, you know, Griffin was a little rusty to start out, and that he's gotten a little bit better as we've gone on. But man, it's really surprising. I don't think I would have saw a 0-3 start. Vincent, what about you?
No, that is a surprise. That RG3 is starting slow. You know, that could be from, you know, the lack of play with the offense. Now he has to get in game shape at game speed. He is improving, though. The defense, that's a major, major catastrophe.
1,046 yards scored against Washington defense. It is the second highest record in NFL history, a record in which, of course, no one wants to have, but there you have it, Chris.
Yeah, it was really a mess. But, you know, they did get better in the second half. You have to say that. But, boy, they've gotten off to a horrible start. But, you know, the offense hasn't helped them either. So, you know, maybe they'll get a little bit better because the Oakland Raiders are coming up.
Well, we'll see. But the tentativeness of Robert Griffin III, one of the observations that I've actually made through 3 of the games, is that he's been a little bit apprehensive to step off. We saw that in the first game with the Eagles. We saw that in the second game against Green Bay. In the third game, he was a little bit better. He ran without stopping and hesitating. And so that could be him coming back to his own again, as Vincent alluded to. Vincent.
One thing he does need to do, though, he has to learn how to slide properly. Right now, he's doing too much sliding with head first. He's got to get that down because that's going to help keep him safe.
Let's talk a little bit about the defense. Jim Haslett, the defensive coordinator of the Redskins, said, in a nutshell, he says, no matter how good you do in practice, no matter how good you tackle in practice, you have to bring it to the field, baby, and that's true. And so he took blame for the way in which the Skins are performing thus far for defensively, but the onus is on each individual player to step up and play the game. Although we did see the Redskins step up in their 27-20 loss against who did they play?
The
Detroit Lions. There you go. By the way, Adama Suh, he was not a factor in that game, but I digress. Go ahead.
Yeah, but I kind of look at it like the second half of the game against Detroit, the defense played a lot better, something that they can build on because, you know, you would have thought, especially with a guy like Calvin Johnson coming in, you would have thought that this was going to be a big game for him because they were talking, Detroit was looking forward to this game because they thought like, wow, the Redskins defense so bad, we're going to be able to run it up. But 27 points, all things considered, that wasn't too bad. They did much better in the second half.
But defensively, when it counted, the secondary, they gave up too many passes, over 10 yards, between 10 and 25 yards or more. And that's a big thing that Haslett has got to correct. I'm not so sure why they went away from the running game and Alfred Morris. He only wound up with about 50-some yards. Yeah. They need that running game to get that offense going. So Mr. Haslett, he has to turn this defense around or he could be worried about his job by midseason.
Well, let's talk in terms of is there cause for concern at 0-3? I mean, you have 13 games left in the season, and so, Chris.
I think you have a little bit of concern, but again, as we started off at the top, the NFC East has proven to be so bad. I mean, you know, a couple years ago, Seattle won the NFC West at 7-9. So, you know, at this particular point, 8-8 might do it. And let's not forget, at one point last season, the Redskins were 3-6. Who would have guessed at that point they would have gone on to win the division?
That's very true, Vincent.
The way the other teams are playing, the Redskins still, you know, they have a shot. It's early in the season, and they're going to play these teams, you know, throughout the year. Also, RG3 is going to get better, and hopefully that defense is going to get better.
Well, we hope that it gets better because in order for them to win, you know, defense has to stop the offense, and the offense has to actually score. So if the Skins can continue on the pace that they're on, at least from today's game, you know, I take away that, you know, from this game is that at least they are making it close.
Yeah, well, again, there is some medicine on the way called the Oakland Raiders. And that's what they have to look at, you know, to try to get at least that first win when they go out to Oakland.
Well, we'll see how it goes against the Oakland Raiders because, man, you're talking about at this rate and the way in which the Redskins are playing, you never know how that's going to end. Chris, we're going to let you have the last word on this.
Yeah, that's, you know, just as I said, the Oakland Raiders, that's what ails them. But I'll tell you something. After the Oakland Raiders, they've got some tough games coming up with Chicago and Denver, and I can't remember who the other, you know, they could stay a 1-6 start, so they need to make sure they get the next win against Oakland.
All right, coming up next, thank you very much, Chris. Thank you very much, Vincent. Coming up next, we're going to talk a little bit about college football on the TNCSS Sports Update. As a matter of fact, you are watching TNCSS on AIM. That's via Comcast 69 and Files 38. I'm Kevin Jeter, along with Vincent Charles, Chris Jerry. Afsheen Benab is here in spirit. He's probably home now, you know, after being stuck on 95 for like, I don't know, an hour and a half. This is the nation's capital sports show where it's most definitely on. We'll be right back after this. This is the nation's capital sports show where it's most definitely on AIM, Comcast 69, and Files 38. I'm Kevin Jeter, along with Vincent Charles and Chris Jerry. Our email address is info@tncss.net, or you can check out our award-winning website at www.tncss.net. Hey, welcome back to the nation's capital sports show where it's most definitely on. I'm Kevin Jeter, hanging out with Vincent Charles and Chris Jerry. Let's continue to talk about what we enjoy talking about the most and the best, and that is sports. It's time for the TNCSS College Football Report. We're going to actually talk about 4 teams here. First, let's talk about the Virginia Techies. Virginia Tech, they are 3-1, 29-21 over We Are Marshall. Chris.
Yeah, they're 3-1, which is good. They haven't really looked good in beating anybody. They lost the game against Alabama to start the season, 35-10. But you know that was a game against the #1 team in America. But they've gone on now to win their last 2 games. You know, having beat Marshall, as you mentioned, and then before that East Carolina. Both ugly wins. The game against Marshall was 3 overtimes.
Man, you took my thunder. I was going to say that. 3 overtimes. They blocked the kick, ran it back, scored a touchdown. End of the game as we know it for Marshall. Vincent.
Marshall certainly gave them a battle. They could just as easily have lost that game. A good thing that Kevin just mentioned is the turnovers. They blocked the field goal. They blocked the punt. So they're starting to play better turnover ball as far as special teams. That's a key Coach Beamer thing, is having good special teams, which they've been lacking in the last couple of years.
And you stole my thunder too. That's what composes a Frank Beamer's team, you know, a whine and grind type of team. They seem like they're getting back to that way.
Yeah.
Not almost, but at least some.
Yeah, Beamer ball. But I think they would be a little bit disappointed because I think coming to his final season. They expected a lot offensively from quarterback Logan Thomas, and they're just not getting it. But again, they're 3-1, and that's, whenever you win, you take a win, no matter how ugly it might be.
That's exactly right.
So let's move over and talk about your Virginia Cavaliers. Wahoo! And that's Yahoo, but nonetheless, they won it in their scrimmage game against VMI. I hate to bring that up, but they won it nonetheless. And Mike London is pretty happy, 49-0.
Well, I have a soft spot. I always have had a soft spot in my heart for VMI. But this is a game, really, to be honest, that shouldn't be even played. Back in the day when college football is a little different, Virginia playing VMI, they play Virginia Tech games like that. When VMI was actually half decent, that was a good game. But now there's so much difference in the program, and quite frankly, looking at some of the beatdowns that went this weekend, Virginia should not be smiling too much about beating VMI 49-0.
Well, they have Pittsburgh coming up next, so they may not be smiling as much, Vincent.
I don't even think VMI should be on their schedule because.
But it's a good payday. Come on, you guys.
It's a big payday.
It's a big payday
yeah.
for these schools. They come in, they get beat a little bit, beat around, but they leave a little wounded, but nonetheless they leave with kind of a bigger pocketbook for their sport department. For the
yes,
schools.
they do. But as far as Virginia is concerned, these types of games, they can give you a false confidence. 1 or 2, okay, but like the first 4 games of the season, they need to toughen up that schedule.
Chris, I don't think Mike London has, make no scruples about it, has any false confidence. I mean, this was a gimme type of feel-good win, but nonetheless, when they're on the road against Pittsburgh, it's going to be a different story.
Yeah, see, that's the problem I have with playing a team like VMI, because it really does nothing for you. In fact, what it can do for you has happened in the Miami game when they had a scrub game like that against Savannah State, is you can get your players hurt in that kind of game. But again, I don't think they learned anything from VMI. Just hopefully everybody came out healthy if you're a Virginia fan.
All right, Howard University are 1-2 as of this broadcast. They play on Thursday, I do believe, against Bethune-Cookman. Chris.
Well, if it's Thursday against Bethune-Cookman, it's going to be another beatdown coming because the Wildcats really are probably the best team in the MEAC. They had a drubbing yesterday as well when they played against Florida State. But the Wildcats are a fairly good team for that particular level. And like I said, I think in the MEAC, they are the class of that 11-team league.
Agreed. Vincent.
Well, they should do pretty well against Bethune-Cookman because Bethune coming off, what was it, 56-7?
Yeah, but Vincent, now, come on. Bethune-Cookman, you talking about Florida State. I would say if I was an odds maker, I would give 40 points to Howard, and Bethune-Cookman, I would say, should win that game easy.
All right, so let's roll over and talk about the game that we really want to talk about, the Maryland Terps. 4-0, baby. I mean, they're doing it. This is the team that Randy Edsall always wanted, and they did it in grand fashion against West Virginia, breaking that 7-year losing streak. How about that?
Yeah, 4-0. They're 2 wins from going to a bowl game, and Maryland's been impressive. Figuring they were 4-8 last year to be 4-0 this year, that's really saying something. Now, let me put the downside to that. It's really difficult to tell how good Maryland is because clearly this West Virginia team that they beat is not very good, probably won't go to a bowl game. They beat Florida International, which is not impressive given that Bethune-Cookman, who we just talked about, beat them.
That's right. So we're going to let
say.
Vincent get in on here.
Very impressive, especially for the defense. 6 turnovers. The first 3 games of the year, the offense carried the load for Maryland. But they played a great game defensively yesterday. And we can't really tell, though. I have a cautious optimism about Maryland.
But a win is a win is a win is a win is a win. So we're going to move on for lack of time.
The ACC.
Win is a win is a win. All right, young man.
We'll see.
All right, a win is a win. What is he talking about? They're 4-0. Come on now.
Well, against who?
They're 4-0.
Against who?
Vincent,
Hapless West
Vincent,
Virginia.
we need to move on. I'm sending you over to your corner now. Please be quiet so we can move on. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the rundown in terms of the roundabout, the TNCSS roundabout. I'm going to mention some stuff for you. You guys can comment on it. First, we're going to talk about the Washington Nationals. I was going to start out last with that, But let's start out first with this. A few games left in the season. By the time this broadcast comes to on air, their season probably would be over. I don't see any way that they're doing really good. Vincent.
It looks kind of bleak. The numbers game is against them. If they wouldn't have started out so slow and not hitting, it would be a different story. But great finish so far and still doing well here at the end of the year. Well,
they're doing well, but as to whether or not they're going to make the playoffs for that final wild card berth, that remains to be seen. Chris.
Well, in our previous shows, it's been kind of a running commentary with us that we've said the Nationals are out, and the only person that held off that they'd make the playoffs or had a shot was Vincent.
That's right. We made that reference in podcast 140 right on Stitcher, the Nation's Capital Sports Show. And so that was Vincent held tight. He held his ground, and he should be commended for that. But nonetheless,
thank you.
They're still not going to make it. I
Yes,
don't care what you say.
Exactly. For all we just
but your optimism, your cautious optimism, as you would like to say, has paid off a little bit. But the key with the Nationals is they should have started out like this at the beginning of the season. Then they would not be in this predicament.
Yeah, they got off to a slow start. I think the postmortem on this season for me, for the Nationals, the most disappointing thing is Steven Strasburg. Now, statistically, you can say he had a better year than last year, but too many times this year they had to shut him down because he had some kind of elbow stiffness or arm stiffness or whatever. If this guy is your horse, if he's supposed to be your best pitcher, you need to have a guy that you can depend on every night or every fifth day to go out there and pitch for you and win, and he didn't do that this year.
Well, perhaps we give him next year to see how things pan out, to see as to whether or not he may be, quote unquote, the workhorse, as Chris alluded to, or the real deal. And the Washington Mystics, they are 1-1 as of this broadcast in the best of 3 games series against Atlanta. Let's hope that they can pull that off and advance in the playoffs. And by the way, congratulations goes out to WNBA head coach Mike Thibodeau, who was awarded the WNBA Coach of the Year. This is his 3rd award being Coach of the Year, but his first time with the Mystics. He's done wonders with that organization. Vincent.
Yes, and the Mystics, they have one more game to play in this initial 3-game series. They played well.
Somehow
the first game.
He repeats me, doesn't he? I like that.
They played well in the first game. Second game, just the opposite. Out-rebounded, outshot. But they got a crucial game coming up this week, and they can move on to the next series if they can take it.
Yeah, the stopgap with the Mystics is that they played tenacious defense, and their offense has showed up this year too. So I'm kind of impressed with that, Chris.
Yeah, so they lost their first playoff game on the road. They won their first on the road, lost at home. So it's a best of 3. So the next game is winner take all to see who'll go to the semifinals.
All right. If you want to email us, thank you very much, Chris. Thank you very much, Vincent. If you want to email us, you can email us at info@tncss.net. Check out our brand new website at www.tncss.net. Wow, we look at our show and we say, where has the time gone? We have a cast of great folks that make the show everything that it needs to be each and every time. So without further ado, drum roll, please, Vincent.
Yes, these are the people here at AIM that do such a great job.
By the way, that's AIM.
AIM.
He aims to
Arlington
That's right.
Independent Media. Devin Gallagher, Kevin Sampson, Charles Smith, Ken Briley, Steve Cordell, Janar Stewart, David Aronson, Chris Chang, and Kimberly Phillip.
Wow, good staff and a lot of modern technology floating around here. Mr. Aronson has this beautiful camera. It looks like something they used in the Super Bowl. And he has it strapped on his shoulder. He's moving it around. I think that's pretty neat, man. I would be actually a videophile, Phil, whatever, if I was in the world of video. But so
on the cutting edge.
But so goes it. I'm an audio man, and we do the radio show here. This is the Nation's Capital Sports Show for our entire staff and crew here at AIM. Comcast 69 and Files 38. I'm Kevin Jeter, along with Vincent Charles, Chris Jerry, and Afsheen Benab. Hello, Afsheen. We thank you for listening to the Nation's Capital Sports Show. We thank you for watching the Nation's Capital Sports Show. Please go out and have yourself a sporting week as well as a sporting weekend. Take care.